Hello and welcome to the Career Confidante, and we're glad that you're here. And this is such a hot topic right now. I'm seeing everything everywhere about branding, but how do you actually do that? How do you stand out online? How do you make an impact in your world? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we have a great guest with us, Kate Pozesnik, and Kate is yeah, hi, Kate. So
Recording
we
in
are going to
progress.
be, yeah, we are going to be talking about digital branding and some of the new things in digital branding. And Kate, you come from a marketing background. Kind of tell me a little bit about how you got into the career space.
Oh, well, let's give the Reader's Digest version. I actually started in this business because I had noticed that my CIO clients that had been selling to struggled to articulate their value, whether their goal was to achieve a specific title, such as CIO or VP, or they were looking to earn a higher salary, commensurate more with their responsibilities. And so when I identified that need and started doing some research, I actually ran into an executive coach that I had worked with when I was in marketing and sales, and he started his own executive coaching firm and asked me if I'd be interested in doing some personal branding for his clients, which also happened to be CIOs. So that was really my introduction in wanting to help other professionals brand themselves, market themselves, and be able to articulate the value that they bring to the table.
Yes, yes. And we're seeing, like I said, we're seeing this huge conversation about branding right now, and everybody seems to be talking about it. But it's different, right? Things have changed, and especially with online branding, it's become more and more important. Why is that happening?
Well, I think part of it is that depending on what your goal is, but let's just say for this conversation that your goal is to find a position or a new job. Employers are looking increasingly at people's digital presence or online presence to determine whether or not that person is a good fit, not only from a qualification standpoint, but also a good cultural fit. So I think that's one of the big things. And I think just the increasing reliance on technology and the web and AI tools means that we have to have an increased presence because more and more people are looking for resources, human resources, using online tools.
Right. It's been funny. I've seen some recruiters talking about, oh, these new tools, and you make sure your digital presence is good because we're using like Seek Out and Find Them and all these tools to go over the web, not just LinkedIn or LinkedIn Recruiter, but all these tools capture across the web. And I was like, well, welcome to the conversation. We've been talking about this since 2018 because Find Them and Seek Out, right? They weren't AI enabled maybe the same way they are now, but that technology has existed and has been being used for a long time. In fact, the gentleman from Seek Out that came and spoke to us, he had started doing this work in the early 2000s. Obviously, the technology has evolved, making it easier to find people, but that's why, we're talking about how important it is to kind of get found. So let's talk about those key elements. What is important for people to be able to get found online?
Well, I think one of the main, more obvious tools to leverage would be social media. And for many people, that would be LinkedIn, whether you're a career coach or you are a job seeker, then social media platforms is really where you want to establish a robust presence. And that's where I would start it. Well, that would be one place, but it's also establishing what your personal brand is, what you value, what your mission is as an individual and as a professional. So it's really digging into who am I? What do I want to be known for? And what do I want other people to think or feel when they see my name or my picture?
Yeah, I love that. So people start with, oh, where am I going to be and what platforms? But then we back up and we say, who are you?
Yeah.
What do you
What do
want to
I
be known
put?
for? Right. And who needs to know you? Because we're not all trying to become influencers and have millions
Yeah.
of followers. We want to have the right people see us. And to be able to choose that, we have to know who are those people, right? So, what
Yes.
else kind of goes into that foundation of the brand?
Well, I think taking along with that is not only knowing who your target audience is, but really understanding what they're looking for in a candidate, in a resource, in an employee is really getting a grasp on those things and getting clarity. I would also say that leveraging some tools is also going to be critical in putting yourself out there outside of social media. So it's becoming familiar with generative AI tools, not only necessarily to brand yourself, but to make sure that your branding is consistent.
Yeah, so that we were talking about this too with those systems that find people, especially for recruiters, the more consistency the person has, the more likely their profile will be found and kind of differentiated from all of the other people with similar names, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and plus, you don't want someone to come across your LinkedIn profile and then find your personal, for example, a personal portfolio, and the two materials don't jive. They're not cohesive. And so that can be problematic because the person viewing your materials online is confused. Who is this person? Are they the person that we're looking for, or are they unsure? Because that sense of ambiguity could cost you opportunities that having a very refined and consistent brand could help you find.
Well, so this is interesting because in our Facebook group, we have a colleague Facebook group for career services providers. And in that group this week, someone was saying they are working with a UI UX designer. So,
Mhm.
a techie person, marketing, who wanted to start a business. And I'm not going to say the name or the type of business because it's really specific, but it's very niche, right? It's like
Mhm.
a counseling niche, way separate from UI UX design, user experience design. And so they were talking about, do you put both things on the LinkedIn profile or not? So
Mm.
kind of tell me what your thoughts are there with you think of this idea of brand consistency and being able to say, oh, yes, this person and this person are the same. What would you have that person do in terms of their LinkedIn profile, but then in maybe other places where they might be promoting this kind of counseling business that's very different than their work?
Ooh, this is a good one. Wow, you really brought out the big guns for this conversation. That I think this is a challenge that a lot of people face, particularly because there's such a large increase in people who are not only employees, but also have some type of side hustle, or gig moonlighting that they do. And so they're confused. What do I put online? Because you want to make sure that you're appealing to both those audiences, right? Potential employers and potential customers. I've had this challenge with lots of clients in the past, and one thing that I advise is, and this is not the most fun answer, but it's an honest one, is really getting clear on which of those avenues are you more invested in. I would first try to prioritize and figure out, is it going to be more fulfilling and lucrative financially to go in this direction or this direction? So I think that you can have both of those endeavors on your LinkedIn profile, but I would try to find some kind of common theme to tie why those two different jobs or occupations work well together, how they complement each other, or how doing one job makes you better at the other. Because you're going to have to explain that there's some kind of connection there. That's what I think is the most I think that's the most straightforward approach is either choosing which one is going to be most important and really putting most of your eggs in that basket, or finding some kind of way to tell the story, particularly like in an about summary on LinkedIn, about why that part of your journey makes sense.
Yeah, and this is branding, right? So, kind of depending on your view, you might see the 30,000 foot view in the big picture. who are you and what are your strengths? And then how do those show up in both of those worlds?
Hmm.
Or different worldview is kind of like the foundation, right? What are those foundational pieces of who you are? And then how do those spring into these two different things? And that could be the story in the about section. Then most people were recommending that this person put their side hustle as a project or something
Hmm.
that is not high profile on LinkedIn, but
Yeah.
is on LinkedIn
Hmm.
just in case there's an opportunity. But I think you're thinking about audience. So if my main audience on LinkedIn is hiring managers for this UI UX thing, not necessarily customers for my B2C business, because LinkedIn is
Right.
much more B2B. So
Hmm.
if they're, especially if their business is B2C, then it's not going to make that much sense to really highlight it on LinkedIn. But if you have an Instagram account for your B2C business, this counseling business, if people find you on Instagram, you want them to be able to connect the dots on LinkedIn. You were saying this earlier, and it kind of gave me this aha moment about this situation is if they don't have anything about their side hustle on LinkedIn, it may be assumed that these are two separate people. Now,
Yeah.
that assumption could benefit the candidate if they really are
Right.
separate, or that assumption could hurt the candidate if there's some goodness that they could get from someone finding them on Instagram under this different business idea too. So
Right. Yeah, it is. I think it's partly a case by case basis too. Really depends what those two endeavors are, depends where audiences of each of those or the client audience or employer audience resides. So I like your suggestion of knowing who your audience is, where they spend their time, where your product or service, and that could be yourself, um, should be offered or is sought after, then those things all kind of come into play. And I wouldn't say there's hard and fast rules necessarily for how I would approach that situation with every client. So I
yes.
like that.
Yeah. And the example kind of walks people through what we do in the personal branding process, right? It's who are you? What are you marketing? Self, towards employment or business. And then who's the audience? Because that is going to drive the messaging that you choose from that authentic messaging, which is where we're going to go next, as well as the platform that you choose. So
Hmm.
we talk about this in our Certified Digital Branding Strategist program. If you're in the career space, we run the program live twice a year, or you can join us self-paced and then join the next live class whenever. But it gives you a chance to go through this process for yourself, then also have all the tools to do it with a client. Who are they? What do they want to be known for? And then how are they going to show up online to connect those dots? So we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what's changed because of AI and how you can keep your online presence powerful while you're maybe using some of those tools to help you,